Okay, is it okay if I speak now?
Yes.
Okay, so for anyone who's listening, we have there's a small but faithful Christian community still trying to bring hope and healing to the Middle East. PCUSA has been involved in the region trying to do this sort of thing with partner churches for more than 150 years. Of course, the turmoil that's been going on there has had a terrible effect on those trying to be faithful to Jesus. Elmarie Parker has served as PCUSA's regional liaison to Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. The heartbeat of her work is to help deepen and strengthen the relational ties between the church in the region and the church in the US. Her husband, Scott, serves as the Middle East Council of Churches, serves with the Middle East Council of Churches as a writer in residence. He uses storytelling to communicate the experiences and views of the Middle East Church and peoples with Presbyterian constituents in the US and with MECC partners also in Europe. Scott and Elmarie both have served as parish pastors here in the US, and they've been working in the Middle East out of Beirut since 2013. So and we've heard from, my wife and I, Glenette, we arrived in Davidson at DCPC just about the time you last talked to our congregation, Elmarie.
Very good.
I remember joining that, listening to your presentation with fascination. And of course, terrible things were happening in Syria at that time. Yeah. So I personally am very interested in hearing what's been happening in the meantime. And so that's my intro.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Joe. And thank you, Robert, for this invitation to be with all of you. And I'm hoping that Scott will also be able to join us. For him, it's, let's see, around 11 p.m. So it should be possible for him to join, but the power situation and the internet connection situation in Lebanon right now is very precarious and not very predictable. So we'll see what happens. But it's a privilege to be with you all today, and I'm grateful to be able to share a little bit of what has been going on. We normally try to address with some level of specificity the situation in all three of the countries to which we have the privilege of relating as mission co-workers with the Presbyterian Church USA, that is Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. But today, we'd like to especially focus on Lebanon and touch on some of the ripple effects that has, the situation in Lebanon has in the wider region. And as I've been reflecting on this, thinking about how to share some of the story of Lebanon, what has struck me is this idea of treasure in the ordinary. The picture that you see on the screen here alongside of that title, Treasure in the Ordinary, is a piece of art that was shown at the water exhibition at Marfa Contemporary Art Gallery in Beirut this past July, as we were approaching the 1-year remembrance of the Beirut port explosion. And this is a work that was done by Stephanie Sade in 2014, but it's just as relevant today. And this is what she says about this particular art piece. She says, every living thing has two natures. The first is the one everybody sees. The second is the one that you see when you open them up. The second nature of this broken glass is its brokenness, which devalues it. And so she added gold leaf to the edge of the break, making the broken part the most valuable. It resonates for me with what Paul speaks about in his second letter to the church in Corinth. We find that in chapter 4. And the core of what he says there is found in verses 7-9. He says, but we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. Some of you may be aware that the Presbyterian Mission Agency, of which World Mission is a part, has adopted a Matthew 25 focus for our work. And one of the aspects of that that really resonates for me is this call by Jesus through that last parable in chapter 25 of Matthew, where he talks about the last judgment, the sheep and the goats, and how it is that the Son of Man will recognize those who recognized him in the people around them. And it was simple actions of honoring the dignity of people who were hungry, thirsty, in prison, without clothes, those that are often on the margins of society. And so those three pieces together have really struck me as we think about the situation in Lebanon and this idea of treasure in the ordinary, because so much of what has happened is the widening of those who are at the margins of Lebanese society. Let me go to a different part now here. So I want to tell some of the story through sharing art, street art that we have seen on the buildings and walls all around greater Beirut. Scott and I, we were in Beirut a few months ago and saw this particular piece of street art. We are all beggars. And the gentleman sitting here is a father of several children, husband, and used to be employed at a company that could no longer afford to keep their employees. And so now he shines shoes on the sidewalk, on the street, in order to earn some kind of minimal funds to provide for his family. This is a common reality now in Lebanon. Over the last 2 years, since August of 2019, we have borne witness to the collapse of a country and what it is like when a country's infrastructure, economic system, banking system, social support systems, political system, when all of that collapses simultaneously. And it is heartbreaking. There are not enough adjectives to describe what this has been like. So I want to share just a couple stories to help bring that into focus. Lebanon has been a middle-income country since the end of the Civil War, when the agreements made to end the Civil War in 1990 put into place a governmental process where power was shared between all of the different religious identities in Lebanon. There's 18 different religious identities in Lebanon. So it's a very complex governance system, and it was an attempt to bring about equity in representing those different groups in parliament. But part of the challenge is that many of the people who were in leadership were those that were formerly leading the various militias that were part of the Civil War and fighting with one another. And so those leaders and those closest to them have really taken advantage of Lebanon in the past 30 plus years since the end of the Civil War to enrich themselves And we have seen the economic gap widening between those who are extremely wealthy. This is Scott here.
Hey, baby.
Hi. I'm on the call. Are you able to join us?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Are you able to join us? We're on the call together with Davidson College.
Really, it's okay.
Elmarie, we can hear Scott through your computer, just so you know.
Okay.
And here it says it's 11.
Yeah, I think I misspoke when we talked earlier.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I thought I was preparing to stay up till 2 a.m.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how okay. I thought it was, so right now it's about 11:20.
Yep. So come on whenever you're available. And
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry.
yeah,
All right.
no worries.
Okay.
Okay, see you in a bit. Good. He'll be with us in just a second. Yeah, so that whole process of enrichment of those that were already super wealthy, and the over time increasing wealth gap between them and the middle class, and certainly those that were already impoverished, has just continued to grow. And in August of 2019, that reached a breaking point. And some of it was instigated by people of wealth that were moving their money out of the Lebanese banking system. And that led to the banking system starting to crunch down on who had access to their funds and where they could move them to and what amounts and all of that. The final pieces to people's frustration came in October with a combination of events, October of 2019. One was a really horrific forest fires in the mountains of Lebanon, which they have not had that level of fire in years. And Lebanon has firefighting equipment and helicopters that can scoop up water from the Mediterranean and dump it on the flames. But instead of using tax revenue to maintain those helicopters so that they were ready to operate, that money went into the pockets of various people. And so the Lebanese government had to hire firefighting equipment from Cyprus in order to manage that forest fire. The Lebanese people were furious, absolutely furious. Shortly after that, as the leadership of the country was considering how to begin to address the growing deficit in the country, a huge amount of indebtedness, their answer to that, rather than dealing with any of the corruption, greed, siphoning of public funds, any of that, their answer was to begin taxing WhatsApp calls. Well, for any of you who are familiar with WhatsApp, you would understand exactly how ridiculous that idea is. For any of you for whom WhatsApp is new, WhatsApp is the smartphone application that people use throughout the Middle East to stay in contact with one another. It is what is accessible to people who do not have a whole lot of money, so that they can stay in touch with family and friends and conduct whatever limited business they might have. That was the final straw. And some of you may recall the pictures of some of the protest movements that began to erupt in Lebanon during that time. It was amazing, really, to be in Lebanon at that time and see and hear what was going on. What was different and distinct with this particular season of protest, and what was in Lebanon known as revolution or thawra, is that it brought people together. You saw people from all across the age spectrum, literally from infants to 90-year-olds. You saw people from every political party gathering together, every religious identity gathered together, and everyone was out on the streets, not only in Beirut, but in all of the other larger cities across Lebanon and in all of the smaller towns across Lebanon. Lebanon has never experienced that level of unity from its citizens. And the common refrain was, all of you as our politicians have to get out. We need to start over. All of you means all of you. It was remarkable. And it was protest in Lebanese style. So what that means is that as people gathered on the streets, it was not just about political slogans, really pressing for the resignation of the government, but also people brought out their barbecues, and they brought out their TVs, and they brought out their stereo equipment, and there were DJs playing dance music and dabka, one of the traditional dances of Lebanon. People were in the streets dancing dabka together. Weddings were taking place. It was an event for the entire country to be part of. And there were incredible high hopes at that point in time that that the people could effect change in Lebanon, which does have a democratic system. It is a parliamentary system. It did lead to the resignation of the prime minister at the time. And so there was this sense that perhaps something new could happen. There was a new prime minister appointed by the end of December, a new parliament in place by the beginning of January of 2021. They were just getting started with their work for which they were appointed, and then COVID-19 hit. And like the rest of the globe, everything shut down in Lebanon. So the first of the tsunamis was the revolution that started in October of 2019. The second of the tsunamis was COVID-19 that started in February of 2020. And then Lebanon followed what so many other countries around the world have done with the pandemic in terms of a mix of shutdowns, people needing to mask up, temperatures being taken at stores, needing to make appointments to go grocery shopping to limit the number of people in stores, all kinds of protocols. And in the midst of so much other chaos overall, it's really quite stunning how well Lebanon has worked with the pandemic, even though it did continue to cause, it added to the economic pressures on people in Lebanon. And then came the Beirut port blast in August of 2020, absolutely devastating. One of the largest non-nuclear explosions in human history. And it just flattened a very significant part of Beirut. Over 300,000 people lost their homes in that blast. Several hundred people were killed and hundreds more were injured. It was demoralizing, to say the least, for the people of Lebanon, not only those in Beirut who were directly impacted, but everyone in Lebanon. Because again, it was such a visceral illustration of how negligent the government had been of its people's welfare. That disaster escalated the decline of the Lebanese lira and the rest of the economic collapse that has happened since then. So it's been 4 major tsunamis that have hit Lebanon in the last 2 years. The original political collapse brought about by the revolution that was really fueled from political mismanagement over multiple decades, COVID-19, the Beirut port blast, and then the economic collapse of Lebanon. And to give you a feel for what that economic collapse has been, for middle-class families who, on average, teachers are part of the middle class, and on average, a teacher in a private school, because there's very limited public education in Lebanon, makes around $1,000 a month. That's the equivalent in lira. It equals around $1,000 a month. That amount of salary, because of the crashing of the lira today, is worth around $85. Again, there's not enough words to fully get at the disastrous impact of these four major events in Lebanon. What it has meant is that the middle class has disappeared. They have become impoverished. And those that were already impoverished have now become destitute. It's the first time since the famines of World War I that people in Lebanon are going hungry. As we talk with our friends in Lebanon who lived through the Civil War, what they say to us on a regular basis is never in the entirety of the Civil War were things this bad. During the Civil War, we always had access to our funds. People no longer have access to their bank accounts, or if they do, it's in only very, very limited amounts. During the Civil War, people still had access to electricity. Now the government provided power for which people, pay their utility bill. It functions anywhere from 0 hours a day in a bulk of the country to 2 to 4 hours a day in some places in the country. That means that people are fully reliant on generators to supply their electricity. Well, generators require fuel, and all of the fuel subsidies have just dropped. And so what that means is that Lebanese citizens are having to adjust to 30 years of inflation in the space of 3 months. So they went from paying the equivalent of around 67 cents a gallon to now paying $3.70 a gallon for gas. They simply can't afford the fuel that generators require to operate. And so there are countless households now that have no electricity, which means they have no way to refrigerate food. And the price of propane to operate a cooking stove has also increased at that same rate. So this street art, "Give us today our daily bread," is more than a phrase taken from the Lord's Prayer. It is literally the cry of the people of Lebanon at this particular time. Into that context, our partners have been working to help preserve people's dignity. That has happened in a variety of ways, certainly by providing food, baskets, not literally baskets, but whole bundles of foodstuffs. PCUSA, through local congregations and through our national offices, has been part of helping to fund our partners in that kind of work. We have partners that have been part of helping families rebuild from the Beirut port explosion. We have partners who are working on trauma resiliency skills, helping people recover from not only the trauma of the Beirut port explosion, but the PTSD that set off in countless adults that survived the Civil War. And we have partners that are helping cover medical expenses for people because that is now completely out of reach, and the pharmacies have bare shelves. And so we're working with partners to try and get medications into the country, and there's a number of different entities that are doing that. And providing rent assistance, because owners of apartments are demanding that rent be paid in US dollars, and no one has access to US dollars. And so a $1,000 a month rent, which is common, to pay that in the equivalent of lira at 20,000 lira to the US dollar is more than what people are earning in a month. On average, people are earning around 600,000 lira a month right now. So this is the context in which our partners have been working. And it has just been heartrending to try and take all of that in. These are a few of the scenes that came up during the revolution that I wanted to share with you, just to show you how the people were working together. This fist symbolized one of the symbols of people in the protests, and in Arabic is written Thawra. This is revolution in Arabic. And here in the foreground is a phoenix made by another Lebanese artist out of the remnants of the first fist that was here, that one of the political parties sent people to tear down. The phoenix has significant relevance to Lebanon. It's one of the symbols of Lebanon. And this is the image of hope that draws people of all different religious traditions together, that like the phoenix rising out of the ashes, they hold to the hope that Lebanon will also rise out of the ashes. And we pray, may it be so. This is another piece of art that was made downtown by another artist. It's made all out of different trash that the artist found on the roadways: bottle caps, cans, pop top cans, washers, just a whole variety of things. And again, demonstrating what was really a first in Lebanese history of people coming together and claiming their common Lebanese identity rather than their particular political party or religious affiliation. At the 1-year remembrance of the Beirut port explosion, there was also public art that was made. This that you see here that's being suspended by this crane in the background is made out of some of the twisted remnants of one of the warehouses right by the port. And you can see that this human figure is holding a dove. Again, part of the hope of the people of Lebanon that true salam, in Hebrew, what we call shalom, God's wholeness, would come to Lebanon. And another piece of public art, also by the destroyed port. These are grain silos in the back that were destroyed by the port explosion. They had several years worth of wheat stored in them. All of that is gone. And the cost of bread, along with, because of the destruction of the wheat and because of the fuel situation, has escalated through the roof. And bread is a staple in any Mediterranean diet. So act for justice. This is the cry of the Lebanese people, and they are still waiting for the outcome of an inquiry into the Beirut port explosion, and for those responsible to be held accountable. Another way in which Lebanese tried to take this awful event and turn it into a symbol of hope. This is a Christmas ornament made from the countless acres of shattered glass throughout the city of Beirut following the port explosion. And artists picked up that glass and turned it into art, one of those being the Christmas ornament. And then this piece of street art, this is painted in just a massive mural right as you come into downtown Beirut. And again, speaks to what people are holding on to in the midst of what is just an absolutely agonizing situation. I think it really speaks to who the Lebanese people are, that the social fabric is still hanging together and hasn't disintegrated under the pressures of these 4 tsunami waves. We are seeing places where violence spikes, like the protests and the shootings that were broadcast around the world a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago now, maybe. What breaks my heart as someone from the US living in Lebanon is that the international news only picks up those kinds of experiences. The international news does not show this or show how the people are persevering in the midst of these circumstances. And you can see at the bottom of the mural here how all the significant aspects of the Levant and Mesopotamia area history is painted into this at the bottom. So you have churches and towns and mosques and historic places all woven into this mural. So people, they go back to the reality that they have been in this land since before history began being recorded. And they have no intention of abandoning their country, even when many people have been so under pressure that they've had to leave to try and find work elsewhere to provide for their families. I mentioned some of the work that our partners are doing, and I just wanted to show you a graphic of the many partners with whom we have the privilege of working, both in Lebanon and in Iraq and Syria, and also in the Gulf states. So 15 different partners that we're in regular conversation and relationship with, and very grateful for their faithfulness in the midst of the context of what's going on. Scott's going to pick it up from here to talk about the specific work that he is part of with Middle East Council of Churches.
Hi, everybody. Oh, it's good to at least be with you via the miracle of technology. And Elmarie, feel free to chime in here. I got my wires crossed a little bit, so I'm a bit scruffy. I was expecting this to be at my 2 a.m. and now it's about just about 11:47, I think. So, so the good news of this is we actually still have power for another 15 minutes or so. So we don't have to speak by candlelight. So that's good. But yeah, so I was thinking this is going to be a few hours from now, and so so I'm scruffy, but you know, that's okay. That's actually kind of a theme of all of this, is that things are kind of a bit messy, and that's okay. So one of the real joys I'm experiencing this week is we are able to get our Strong Kids program up and going again. It's been close to a year. I can't believe it's been a year, but it's been about a year since we have done a Strong Kids program. And what's been going on in terms of there was COVID, and well, first there was, you know, the revolution we had to cancel at one point, and then, you know, COVID, and then and then there'd be various lockdowns. And just even a couple of months ago, we had to cancel because there was no fuel. And one of the other things that I do, there's a place called Home of Hope that I do trauma work at, and they've had to stop having me come and visit the kids because they do not have well, first of all, they don't have the budget to handle the just the skyrocketing price of fuel to have me come out there. But also there was a period of weeks and weeks where you just could not get fuel. And there were these huge long lines for cars where people would have to park their car at 4 p.m. To be able to then come back at 6 a.m. when the gas stations opened to fuel up their cars. So we couldn't even get taxis to take us places. So there's just been all of this messiness and challenges that have been just making it hard to even do the programs to help people deal emotionally with all of the challenges. So this week we were able to get Strong Kids up and going again. And the first day, so we've had 2 sessions so far. We do it on Thursdays and Saturdays. And on Thursday, so here's kind of the scene, and this picture is a little bit of that. You see all of these craft supplies. We do a lot of craft supplies as we are teaching trauma skills. We'll do different craft projects to help kids be able to have practical expressions of some of the skills and experiences that they are processing. And so there was just at one point, as the kids were knee deep in putting together one of the projects, there was just supplies everywhere, pipe cleaners, little googly eyes. I mean, the floor was just strewn with stuff. It was just, chaos. The kids are having a blast, and Rana, and she is our Lebanese Arabic speaking psychologist that's my partner with Strong Kids for the past several years. She just comes up to me and she's just beaming. She just says, "I love this mess." And that just struck me that here's this beautiful mess. It's just crazy and chaotic. And yet these kids, in the midst of this mess, these kids are finding a center, and they are able to connect with a sense of peace and skills that are able to keep them going. And so I just love that phrase, as Rana said, "I love this mess." And in Arabic, it is fauda helwa. Fauda is kind of the equivalent of mess, and helwa is beautiful. So fauda helwa, it is a beautiful mess. And here you see the kids cleaning up the mess. And Middle Eastern kids, oh, you would love them. They are when they're asked to actually before they're asked to clean up, they clean up. And here you see these kids cleaning up the mess that we all made together, without griping. It's just amazing. And these are so Strong Kids. I think we talked about it when I was with you guys, almost 3 years ago. These are Iraqi and Syrian refugee kids. Their families are now living in Lebanon. And And so Strong Kids, Strong Emotions is a program that MECC developed for us to be teaching trauma resiliency skills to these kids, and it's passing on to these families. So so here you see this Fauda Halloway, this beautiful mess that in the midst of such challenge, these kids are learning how to thrive and keep going. The slide here, I love this. This is I'll give a little explanation of this here. During this mess of the past couple of years, with the pandemic, we haven't been able to do Strong Kids on a regular basis. So we took advantage of this crazy, messy time. And one of the things I did is I started getting a hold of classes with a group called the Trauma Resiliency Institute. And this is a group that is doing a model of trauma resiliency that is very practical, and it very much connects with the best of clinical and neurological scientific research that's out there in terms of dealing with trauma. But this group has a particular bent towards advocacy and working with underserved regions, particularly Central America, but now we're trying to do more in the Middle East now. So Trauma Resiliency Institute, I started training with them a little over a year ago and learning their trauma resiliency skills. And then just this past summer, I did kind of a follow-up course on how to teach these skills. And so for the past year, I've been taking all of these skills I've been learning, and I've been coaching my partner, Rana Abu Rashed. She's our psychologist with Strong Kids. And so for the past year, I've been teaching her all of these skills and coaching her, and we've been working together on this, and you'll see a picture of her in a couple of moments here. But as we were preparing for this current round of Strong Kids, Strong Emotions, as we were preparing, Rana said, okay, I got the list of kids that we're going to be working with. It's around 20 kids or so that we're able to work with. And she said, basically, none of these kids are literate for various reasons. These kids, even though many of them are around 12, 13 years of age, they have not had the privilege of learning how to read and write. So we figured that we needed to put all of these skills into an expression that they can understand. So I went to my PowerPoint and put together this little slide that you see here. When we made this into a big poster. So the main, the core trauma resiliency skills that we teach in the trauma resiliency model, we put into symbols. So as we teach them, the kids, even if they aren't able to read and write, they are able to still understand them as we work with them. And so we have the skill of tracking. So at the bottom of the little face you see here, this is tracking, which is paying attention to the sensations in your body. The trauma resiliency model, also called the community resiliency model, this is biology based. And so we all understand this. It takes the sensations that we experience when we have various forms of trauma, and we track those sensations that our body produces. And then here on the thumb, the little apple shape, this is resourcing. And that's one of the primary skills. We help people hone in on a memory or a person or an experience or an idea or something symbolizing their faith, something that gives them strength or comfort or courage. That might be a person in your life, that might be an experience that you had, a passage of scripture that really connects with you. But we help people connect with the resource that gives them strength and the different biological sensations that arise when we focus on that resource. And then the little tree we see on the index finger is grounding, which is a way that when you experience trauma, you feel like you are thrown for a loop, and you feel like you cannot connect with real life or even the ground. And so grounding is where you connect with the physical sensation of having your feet planted on the ground, or with our kids, we often have them push up against a wall, and that physical sensation of being in contact with something solid helps them ground, and that puts them in the present moment. In trauma, people often disassociate, and grounding helps you reconnect with the here and now. Help now that's the middle finger, and that is a set of skills that are very practical, things like taking a deep breath, drinking a glass of water, a number of other different skills that help you get some immediate relief from some of the extreme trauma sensations that you feel. The ring finger, the little fist there, that's a skill called gesturing, another skill that we use. And then on the pinky finger, this is called shift and stay, where if you feel different unpleasant sensations in a certain part of your body, we will help the person shift to a part of their body where they feel neutral or pleasant sensations, and focus on the sensations there. So that's shift and stay, and that's all of these skills together are things that we help people use in dealing with some of the trauma experience that they have. Here, this slide here. Here on the left, this is Rana. Rana is my partner. She's amazing. One of the things that's been fantastic about working with her is that she gets all of this. She understands this. She's great with kids, and we have worked together on building the Strong Kids program. And she's going to be able to help take this into the future. So right now, when we do our courses, I just kind of sit in the corner, and at a social distancing distance, but I basically coach her, and she is teaching these skills to our kids in Arabic, and I'm really training her to be the next level of what we do. So that's just been an amazing gift that these are skills that we are teaching to other people. Her husband, Alan, he actually is he's an officer in the Lebanese military, and I have been meeting with Rana and Alan to teach both of them, along with their 10-year-old daughter, Sasha. She's been part of a little bit of this, but I will go over to their house and they will make something delicious for me, and we'll have some fellowship together. And then I will teach them some of these trauma skills. And one of the great things is that since Alan is in the military, he is learning these skills so that he can teach them to his fellow officers who have been traumatized during all of this war and all of this ugliness that's been going on. And so we are building the number of people that know these skills and can teach them to other people. So that's just been an amazing thing. So just the practical nature of this is amazing. This Help Now poster that you see here, even though the English is in Help Now, Rana will be taking all of the English and replacing it with Arabic. But we made this poster because as we're teaching the Help Now skills to our kids, since most of them aren't reading or writing either Arabic or English, we need symbols and pictures. And so, so this past week, we were able to teach the Help Now skills to our kids using symbols and pictures. And so all of this is just very practical. And you can go to the next slide, Elmarie. This is fun. As I said before, we do a lot of crafts. The thing with crafts, even if Strong Kids was just 2.5 hours of doing arts and crafts together, that would be something wonderful. It's amazing. With arts and crafts, what I like to do is I just like to take a huge bag of foam and googly eyes and pom-poms and little shapes and stuff, and just pour them out on the table. And instead of telling the kids what to make, just say, make what is in your imagination. And just that process of letting the kids go wild and be creative, that is part of healing for these kids. For Syrian and Iraqi refugees, most of these kids are living in cramped apartments with multiple families because apartments are very expensive. Their parents' work is very hard to find. Refugees are paid at the bottom of the barrel. Each week, as we talk with our kids about trauma experiences, they talk about how stressed their parents are and just the abusive language that they hear and just how difficult it is being at home because of all the stress. And so, doing crafts is a way for these kids to be and to connect with their imaginations and their hearts and to be in a space where they can just be present and be affirmed. And so these little things that you see here, these are, oh yeah, you can go to the next slide. So on the first week, what we did is we had our kids make little, we call them mini-me's, little mini representations of themselves. And this is because as we do some of the different trauma work, one of the big keys that we do with this trauma resiliency model is called the resilient zone, and being able to kind of monitor where you are at in that resilient zone. There's kind of an okay zone where even though tough things might happen, you can kind of ebb and flow with life. And you have ups and downs and you're okay, but sometimes something will happen and you will get bumped up into the high zone, or you will get bumped down into the low zone. So the low zone is kind of being depressed, numb, where you can barely connect. The high zone is where you're angry and agitated. And so we used these little figures, and we'll continue to use these little figures where the kids can take their little mini me. And when we talk about a different scenario, something they experience at home or whatever, that they can kind of take their little figure and put that at where they're at in the zone. And as you can see, here are some kids in the high zone, some kids are in the low zone, a couple are in the okay zone. So we integrate crafts with this. And that's just been really a phenomenal way of, one, helping the kids connect with these concepts, but just in accessing their imagination, that has been part of the healing. And so here you see some of this Fauda Helwa, this beautiful mess. These kids that are being creative, and they are learning skills that are going to help them through some really tough times. And here's another picture of that. So yeah, this is just a thing of real joy. Elmarie, is there anything I'm kind of missing? Oh, yeah, and here's one of our great pictures here. So all of these pictures actually are just of this past week. So that's been incredible. So Elmarie will just share a little bit about how we can join together in partnership.
Well, thank you again for this opportunity to be with you all and to talk through with you some of what we have been experiencing and accompanying our partners in as they've been trying to navigate and make sense of what is going on in their country. And as we have really sought to walk along with them and support and encourage them and make visible to them the ways in which Presbyterians here in the US are also with them through prayer and through being part of supporting this different work that is happening, both the trauma resiliency work that Scott shared that is being uplifted by Middle East Council of Churches, and some of the other work that I mentioned earlier. And so we're very grateful to you all for your partnership with us over the years, and the opportunities we've had to visit with you in person. And we're looking forward to continuing in relationship and seeing how we can continue to weave together what our partners are working on and what Christ's Spirit has placed on your all's hearts to be a part of. So we're grateful for the emails that come from Joe and from Robert, and invite you, if you haven't connected yet with either of the networks, the Iraq Partnership Network or the Syria-Lebanon Partnership Network. Both of those networks are made up of Presbyterians like you all that feel a particular draw to this part of the world and want to collaborate together. Some fantastic educational resources available, working together on advocacy issues, and working in collaboration with our partners in these countries. So we'll pause there, and happy to respond to any comments or curiosities, questions that you might have.
I just can't get over that this country has been able to hold itself together, the country of Lebanon.
Yeah.
I mean, with the inflation you were talking about, Elmarie, I can't imagine that everybody isn't destitute. It's just incredible. Is it the same government that's survived through, the same government-led country through all of these three big crises you told us about, or have they new people come and go but not much changes?
There was the prime minister that was in place in 2019. He resigned at the end of October of 2019 in response to the revolution. There was a new prime minister designated in December of that year, and he formed a government in January of 2020. They began working on the reforms that are required in order to help Lebanon move out of this place of incredible indebtedness and the horrendous inflation that has hit the country, and the devaluing of their currency. But the port explosion in August of 2020 led to that prime minister stepping down. And then there was, they were in a caretaker government role for 13 months. It took 13 months for the president of the country to negotiate with the parties that put forward a nominee for prime minister to come to an agreement. 13 months.
What a mess.
And so in the midst of that, Delta variant rolled through the country, the ramifications of the Beirut port explosion, the rapid decline of the lira after that point. And our Lebanese friends, they're just like, what are our elected people doing? And so finally, just at the beginning of September, a new prime minister was designated, and it took him, I think, 6 weeks to form a government. And so they're just getting started now, working with the International Monetary Fund and World Bank. And I was listening to an economist from the region earlier this week, and it's a hard road ahead. There's not going to be any kind of immediate relief for the Lebanese people. It will get far worse before it even begins to get better. We're looking at a decade of hard realities ahead. And part of what
assuming there were, go ahead.
Part of what is so heartbreaking in this is that in our experience, the Lebanese people, and this is true in Iraq and Syria as well, are incredibly vibrant, incredibly entrepreneurial. Even in the middle of all of this, there are people trying to start new businesses. It's just mind-boggling. And if the government were just to care even an iota for their people, Lebanon would come back. So, yeah.
How about COVID? Is COVID having a big effect on the country?
It's been an interesting journey. They've been able to keep it at a mid-high level, I guess, rather than it completely overwhelming the hospital systems. But the challenge for the hospitals there has been all of the rest of this. The economic collapse and the banking collapse has meant that the country hasn't been able to import medications. It hasn't been able to import replacement parts for medical equipment. There's not fuel to run the hospital generators. It came to a point where one of the largest hospitals in the country put a one-page ad in the paper and online saying, if the caretaker, this was before the new prime minister was designated, if the caretaker government does not find a way to resolve the fuel situation, this is how many people are going to die each day, people in our care, because we cannot keep their medical equipment running. And it was hundreds of people, hundreds. That's one hospital. So the issue hasn't so much been COVID. That is an issue, but the vaccination process is very well organized. They're still working on campaigns. Some of the campaigns got short-circuited because there wasn't fuel available to keep the vaccines at the temperature that they needed to be kept when they were being transported out to more remote areas of the country. But they're persisting in that. COVID testing is at a very high and efficient level. An example, I needed a COVID PCR test in order to get onto the plane to come to the US. My flight was on Thursday evening. I went in Wednesday morning. I had my test results from a full lab PCR test by 1 o'clock that afternoon.
I think that's better than here.
It is extraordinary. So it's this strange juxtaposition of, you know, and I think it shows those are hospital systems that aren't, they're all private hospitals. And so they know what they're doing. And if they have the resources, Lebanon has been the go-to place for medical care in the Middle East. And so it's absolutely heartbreaking that that whole sector, we've had hundreds of doctors who have left the country, hundreds of nurses who have left the country just in the last year because of what's happening economically in the country.
You know, in the midst of all this awfulness, calamity, how are relations between Christians and Muslims? Is there conflict going on regularly there too, or are the two faiths able to work together on some of these problems?
This is, I think, part of what is so unique about Lebanon. Coming out of their civil war, it was 15-year civil war, and part of the commitment of everyday Lebanese is never again. And so that's part of why I think the social fabric has hung together as well as it has. But there are tensions, and unfortunately, the places where those tensions flare up is because of people in political positions using those, the sectarian party divisions. So by sectarian in Lebanon, that means it falls along religious lines, but using that to accomplish whatever their political goal happens to be. And it's infuriating to the Lebanese people. And the religious leadership of those communities are regularly talking to, you know, their people, whatever their community happens to be, to say, take a deep breath. This is, you know, people trying to take advantage of you and use you to accomplish their ends. Your fellow citizens are not your enemy. We need to work together to get through this. And so there are a lot of interfaith civil organizations working at a grassroots level. That's been the case since the end of the Civil War. And that is part of the reason there is enough social fabric that is interwoven to help provide some stability at a time where there's an incredible amount of instability at a political and economic level.
In your work, are you able to work across sectarian lines? Are you able to work with Muslims and towards common goals?
Yes, we several of the partner organizations that were in that grid at the beginning are interfaith organizations. Some started by Christians, some started by Muslims, but they are interfaith in their nature, and the focus of their work is interfaith. And we also relate to a number of other groups in the country that aren't necessarily partners of the Presbyterian Church USA, but they are partners of our partners. And so we have gotten to know them as well. And just tremendous, tremendous people. And they represent all parts of the Christian family and all parts of the Muslim family. So it's not just, neither of those families are singular in their identity in the Middle East, and certainly not in Lebanon. So
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Elmarie and Scott, I'm going to end the recording part of this and would love to chat a little longer.
Yeah.
Wanted to say anything else before I ended the recording, the part that I will share with others in the congregation that weren't able to be on the call today. is there anything else you'd like to say before I end that?
Another big thank you. We're
Yeah,
very
yeah.
grateful to
I
be
was
with
gonna
you
say
all.
thank you. The gratitude of the people that we work with. They have a sense that they know that we aren't doing this in a vacuum. And just the fact that they know that there are Presbyterians across the globe that actually care about what is happening, that heartens them.
Well, that's encouraging, and we certainly want to do what we can to partner with you in the work that you're doing and the important work of peacemaking and helping to build more resiliency in that, especially that next generation.
Yes.
But we know there's a lot of suffering but so much courage and faith and potential in the people there. And we so appreciate the work that you're doing to help make all that more possible. So we're glad to be in partnership with you. I'm going to end this recording that we'll share with the congregation, and then we can talk a little longer about some of the things if we want to. So